Welcome back to that rugby podcast. A day of interest. You know, there's been a lot of rugby news.
Yep.
Obviously, our first international games for the year since the Six Nations happened. We had a couple of squads get named. But more importantly, for the first time in 21 years, the Blues have won a Super Rugby final, and they did it in pretty bloody convincing fashion, unfortunately. Look, all I can say is I hope it's another 21-year rate. I'm not happy about this. I will say, do I think the Hurricanes may have given them a better fight? Yes. Does it fucking matter because we can't win semi-finals? No. So shut the fuck up, every Hurricane fan that was like, oh, exactly as I was thinking. I'm in there with you. I was like, we fucking blew it, and we did the Chiefs a disservice because we left them out there to be slaughtered in Eden Park. You know, like Chiefs think they were doing themselves a favour by beating us to make that final, but we just did them a disservice. But the Blues were far too good on that day. Absolutely cracking performance from the Blues. As a neutral, what did you make of that game?
Pretty one-sided. It was pretty domineering from the Blues. Sort of. I don't know. I guess like they sort of come. I think they're probably the most underrated champions, if you know what I mean. Like they this whole season they've done really well, but no one's been sitting there saying like, oh yeah, this Blues team is a championship side. This Blues team is gonna take the comp. I think because there's so much uncertainty with the Crusaders not going to be in the finals, but I think a lot of people, and it makes sense with how the seeding went into these finals thinking, yeah, look, Hurricanes are the best team. Hurricanes look like the team is going to take it all. Don't know if anyone can take it to the Hurricanes, blah, blah, blah. Then when they're upset by the Chiefs, everyone's sort of like, oh, well, the Chiefs can pull out some magic here. There was a game 2 weeks ago. Yeah, the Blues won it, but it was only 2 tries. This could be really competitive. Blues have had some injuries, blah, blah, blah. No one's sort of gone into this being like I feel like the Blues team from 2 years ago when they made the final, that team, everyone was sort of like, oh, this is the Blues team that's going to break the drought. Like, this is it. Whereas this team is just sort of coast on by, and they've won the championship. It feels like a bit of a lack of fanfare for them. But, bloody good job. First-year coach as well, Vern Cotter, excellent, comes into the squad, comes into the coaching booth and wins a title his first year. That's it's going to be a name to keep listening for in the New Zealand rugby ranks, Vern Cotter. It's when the game itself was it was almost like a blue wall just holding the Chiefs out, just not giving anything. And look, I think it was the second try where the Ioannis linked up on the sideline and just kept the ball in play, and it was sort of like, look, yeah, this is pretty much over. When the plays are going your way that well, it's very, or going against you that way. If you're a Chiefs fan, there's not much you could do to get back in the game. Look, the fact that Tui Pilotu played through an injury to be there as well for his team just shows how much it meant to them. A very well deserved title from the Blues. They were consistent all year. Only 2 losses, right, the whole year, which is pretty incredible. The Hurricanes also 12-2, but then obviously lost in the semi-final. Best point differential in the competition by fair distance, by about 50, 60 odd points. I think that they are, as I said, underrated champions, and I think they are deserving champions, though.
Yeah, I think the underrating comes from the Aucklanders themselves. I think they were nervous from, as you said, 2 years ago. It was built up, Bowden Barrett. That was the team that was going to break the curse. I don't think, typical fucking Aucklanders. I know I'm going to go on a rant. Like, they probably just sat there going like, oh, we don't want to hype them up too much just in case they lose, because they're so used to losing now. This is why I fucking, I know it was 21 years, but God, I honestly hope it's another 21 years. If the Crusaders aren't winning it, the team I would least like to win it, the Auckland Blues, and they've fucking done it. So, look, sometimes, and it's a bit of yin and yang, you know what I mean? Like, you've got to take the good with the bad. The Crusaders didn't make the finals. I'm pretty fucking happy about that. But with that, I got a Blues fucking victory. I don't know how many more. If there's now becomes a Blue dynasty, and the last 2 dynasties we have are Blues and Crusaders, I might lose my shit. And as Ricky Ioane said, he felt like winning a Super Rugby final was better than winning a Rugby World Cup final. Brother hasn't won a Rugby World Cup final. I don't know what he's talking about. Okay, yeah, you're right, 21 years, but win a Rugby World Cup final first and then say, I was like, this makes me more annoyed that the Hurricanes lost, because I feel like we could have done something to them. I feel like we could have held them down and kept them where they belong. You know, I still have very fond memories of when the Blues were struggling and they were coming dead last out of all the New Zealand teams, and they were up in arms. Oh, Auckland, you know, the best talent of schoolboy rugby comes through Auckland, yet they can't get a good winning team. And now they're going to sit there and they're going to celebrate this for the next year. There was billboards up in Canterbury, there was billboards up in Wellington celebrating a Blues victory. And I just go, you fuckers. But yeah, that's my stance on that situation. I hate the Blues. But you've got to give them the cherries again. They won when it counts. They dominated when it counts. There's players like Patrick Tuipulotu, as you said. Guys like Dalton Papali'i. That whole four-pack just stood up. And deserved winners, as we said. Saying that, it's led to two squads that have been named. Friday, we had the Wallabies named. Today/yesterday, for all those listening on the Tuesday, the All Blacks squad was named. Shall we start with your Wallabies? And interesting team. You kick us away.
Right. So first thing with the Wallabies is Schmidt has followed through on his stance that he's not picking players that are heading overseas or that are already based overseas. He's picked a purely Super Rugby squad, and for players that are staying in Super Rugby as well, which is that. I mean, that's a huge call, right? When you think about the talent that's overseas, the talent that's going overseas, that's pretty huge. Or even the talent that's staying in Australia but not staying in the code. You know, Carter Gordon, Nwangani Tuase, two examples. It's fortunately it's a relatively good time to do it now against Wales and Georgia, two of the less than premier teams in the world. We just saw Wales get spanked by the Springboks. That being said, Wales just spanked Australia in the World Cup last year as well. And the game against Georgia was tighter than it needed to be. But I do like it for the purposes of blooding players, you know, getting them in, getting them, you know, not throwing them in their first career test start in a Bledisloe Cup match, aka Carter Gordon, you know, letting them get on the pitch, play together, be in that Wallaby system. And he had a good quote where it was something like, you know, what your players lack for inexperience, that's why you have coaches. And they've got quite a, he said, some might consider our coaching group old. And he said that as a good thing because of the experience they've had. And he said, I've been coaching rugby for 20 years, international rugby for 10 years. And so I think I know what I can do to improve these players. And I really like that. You know, it's not this Eddie Jones bravado of, oh, yeah, we're going to smash it, we're going to take it to them, blah, blah, blah. It's this, you know, I am confident in my abilities as a coach to improve these players to be test standard. You know, pretty level and, you know, level head on his shoulders.
Yeah, and there's some interesting players, I guess. The big name that's missing out is obviously the Junkyard Dog, which will be a talked about point. But I don't mind that one because, again, he's a young player, finding his feet still in Super Rugby. Not a bad choice. My biggest left off this list that I'm interested to hear your opinion. Now, I know you've got some gun scrum halves, obviously. We talked about this. Jake Gordon, Tate McDermott, Nick White. Ryan Lonergan not making it is just a little bit of a disbelief to me. And I say it in two parts. Obviously, he probably is the fourth best halfback in Australia, but he's led the Brumbies, was captain of the Brumbies, who went the furthest of any Australian team. I don't know how he doesn't make it over Nick White.
Yeah, Nick White's probably a bit of a surprise addition in here for me. I think maybe his tenure and his experience at the Wallabies level is what's keeping him in here. Even over Jake Gordon, look, I love Jake Gordon with all my heart, but he hasn't played up to standard at the Wallabies level. Maybe that's coaching. Maybe that's what that's been. But the amount, I think I've seen him yellow carded more than I've seen him scoring. Which, yeah. So, you know, maybe it's that, but I think you carry one of either Jake Gordon and Nick White, and then you take Lonergan with the other one. And McDermott is more than experienced enough now at the Wallabies level. So, yeah, not really sure about that one as well. I'm not. As I said, sort of speaking generally without going through each individual pick, you know, uh, generally speaking, I quite like this. Obviously, there are head scratches, and there's always going to be. There's a limited number of spots. But if I talk about a pick that I do really like, it's got to be Charlie Cale. I think he has really showed up big time this year and really improved himself. I'd love to see him in that 8 spot and Valentini in the 6 jersey, which is his sort of more natural position that he plays for the Brumbies. Not having to force Valentini to be an 8. So yeah, I think Charlie Cale's a big one in there in the forward pack. And Salakai Lotto, I think he's played really well this year, enough to earn himself a jersey, for the Wallabies. Look, as I said, you're not going to please everyone with all of these picks, especially when you're restricting yourself to just purely Super Rugby players and players that are staying in Super Rugby. But there's a limited number of spots. You can't put everyone on the team that probably deserves a shot to be on the team.
Totally. And there's interesting selections all around. And I will be interested. I like how he's gone about not selecting international players, especially for this. The locking pair that gets selected in that first game will be really interesting because obviously he's selected some locks in here where Ryan Smith, debut, uncapped, Jeremy Williams uncapped. So what team he goes for, what player combo he goes for in that regard will be really, really interesting. Does he see Tom Hooper more of a lock than a 6? Because obviously, even Eddie had big raps on him. I think the whole team had big raps on him. Big question for you, obviously. Team's now been named, but there is no C next to anyone's name yet. Now, talking point has obviously been Eddie Jones had like 6 captains in 2 games. So who are you naming captain? Who would you name captains? My first question. And then it may be the same answer, but who do you think Joe Schmidt will go for?
It's a very good question. You've got two props who have been captains before in Alatoa and Slipper. I don't think either of those would be a bad option. I've said before Kellaway, I think has potential for captaincy in there. Look, really, I don't know who Schmidt's going to pick as captain. If I looking at this team right now, who am I picking as captain? Right now, looking at this paper, I'm picking Alan Alatoa. You've got so much youth in the squad now that I think you need some form of continuity or someone that's been a captain before. That being said, I wouldn't mind Kellaway either. Kellaway's a narrow second. If it depends on which route he's going. If he's going complete overhaul, complete system change, Kellaway. If he's happy to retain some elements of the past, then Alatoa. Who do I think he'll pick? I really don't know. Probably Alan Alatoa.
Yeah, I think he'll pick Alatoa. If I was choosing the captain, I'd go Fraser McWright. I think when I look at the squad, I look at it and I go, who's your other number 7, realistically? Well, you could put Tom Hooper there. Liam Wright can play there, but he's a 6. So I go, he's pretty much selected one specialist 7, and that's Fraser McWright. So my belief is that Fraser McWright will be starting all 3 games at 7, and deservedly so. Let's not forget that he played one of the best Super Rugby seasons by an Australia 7 since probably Hooper in 2014. So I go, I like that. I think he's going to be in the squad for a very long time. I think he's obviously the second coming of Hooper to a point. I think he's got that trajectory opportunity with the right coaching and the backing, and I think why not make him a leader now and go, this is your opportunity to put your hand up. But saying that, a lot of pressure comes with captaincy. A lot, you also want Fraser McWright playing his best footy. And so I think he'll go with Aliatoa. I think he'll have 2 vice-captains. I think one will be Fraser McWright, and then there'll be a back vice-captain, depending who he names. Maybe if they go Tate McDermott at starting scrum half, he might be a vice-captain as well. Or, as you said, Callaway is a fine one. Depends what direction he takes the team in. Moving on to my All Black squad. Actually, before we do that, shall we talk about the most traitorous man in all of rugby at the moment, Alex Hodgman? Obviously, former All Black, now putting on a potential Wallabies jersey, deserved Wallabies jersey. But when he does it, am I going to boo? Yeah, I probably am. You know, that's crossing a line, as far as I'm concerned. If you're an All Black, you don't put on a Wallabies jersey. If you're a Wallaby, you don't put on an All Blacks jersey. It's like you know, maybe like, you know, being born in New South Wales and playing for Queensland. You know, oh, well, that happens quite a lot, though. So, no, what are your thoughts on Alex Hodgman, obviously, selection and playing for the Wallabies?
I mean, look, we've said before in the past we want players to be playing for cross-pollination of Super Rugby teams. I think this is a little bit of going to be a natural side effect. I don't think this will be the last we see of this. Look, I don't mind it. You know, we're so short on props that I can't really say too much about it because we need the fucking props. You know.
Yeah, fair enough. On to the All Blacks then, as we move forward. Some big decisions. Again, won't run you through the team. There's too many to run through to get specifics. But the big name, probably inclusion, is Pasaleo Tosi from My Hurricanes, which I love the inclusion of him. I think he can play both sides of the scrum, but is huge. We've got now 2 Tamatai Williams, and I think that's massively beneficial heading into sometimes, you know, scrumming against the best in the world. When you look at the South Africans and going into an English scrum that will be strong, having very 2 big players like that, I'm very excited for. The big name missing, Hoskins Sotutu. As much as I am a Hurricanes fan and want to say Braden ILC or Peter Larkai, Hoskins Sotutu, I don't know what else he could have done throughout the season to not make the squad. Tied the record for the most tries by a forward with 12. Every single other forward that's on that list with 12 tries is a hooker. So he's done something that no flanker, you know, non-hooker forward has done. I sat there and I go, he's still young, obviously I think he just recently re-signed to 2026.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, someone out there. But I just sat there and I went, I just feel like, you know, you get to a point, and I know Wallace Atiti made it, the Chiefs number 8, who's had a fantastic run into the finals. He wasn't their first choice number 8 when it started the season. I look at the body of work that Hoskins Sotutu's done. I look at the fact that he's been there before, missed out on the World Cup. I just feel like we're losing a potentially great player, fantastic player, and I think he'll end up overseas somewhere making millions of dollars and deserves to. But I just go, when we've got these opportunities, what are we doing? I see, and I know I'll get some backlash for this, but Ethan Blackadder, I rate him highly. His work ethics great. He's coming back from injury still. Like, I think he only played 4 or 5 games for the Crusaders this year. I go, does that body of work equate up to what we just saw from Hoskins Sotutu? Probably not. Luke Jacobson, wasn't that impressed with him throughout the season. You know, a couple costly high tackles in the final, yellow carded in the semi-final. As a captain, is that what you're looking for? Finau I'm fine with. They only selected 3 specialist locks, so I'm assuming that even Jacobs and Papali'i is going to fill in there. Blackadder maybe. But yeah, so that was the interesting one there. We go to the backs. I think the 3 halfbacks they chose were right. Court Stratama to make his debut, and Billy Proctor in the squad as well, which is, again, deserved after another fine season. Only name there you probably bracket missed out, Ruben Love. As you said, you can't fit them all in. I don't know who you drop to get Ruben Love in there. Like, I look at this team, and I don't think, like, I'm not dropping Talia, not dropping Reese, not dropping Narawa, and not dropping Clark. So I go, look, it's either him or Perifeta. I like the idea of Perifeta in the team. I think he deserves another shot. So I think we 2-0 the English. I think we do. I think we'll beat Fiji as well in the game we have against Fiji, and then we'll 2-0 the English. I think the squad, I love what Razor's done with the size. Like, again, it's one of those things that, even the group wasn't selected early in the World Cup back end of the World Cup cycle, and we realised we need some size in this team, and I think we've gone ahead with that.
Yeah, well, speaking of the games against England, let's look at our international rugby and our international games, and we may as well start with Japan versus England. Uh, I mean, sheesh. Bit of a rough one there for Eddie's first game. Where have I heard that before? Um, and after a lot of chat pre-game, again, where have I heard that before? Um, yeah, it was a 52-17 drubbing of the Japanese. Uh, Marcus Smith looked pretty good out there. I think is maybe understanding it a little bit at first five for England. Um, yeah, just incredible effort from the English. Japan, it was always going to be tough playing them in Twickenham, but it is a.
What wasn't in Twickenham? It was in Japan.
Was it? Oh, was it Japan? Sorry, no, that's right. The Barbarians were in Twickenham, weren't they?
Yep.
Um, yeah, rough. It's always going to be rough for the Japanese against the English in any case. And the fuel to the fire of Eddie, the former coach, and all that, and him not being particularly nice about the way he departed and things like that. I mean, it was all set up here for an English win and a big English win. Borthwick is got to be over the moon. The only thing that's probably not so great for him was the late red card to Ewells.
Yeah, I've said this many times. I think the game's past Eddie Jones. I really do. We said this as he came in as Wallabies coach at the back end of his English tenure. I think the game has moved on to point where Eddie Jones is just, his coaching brilliance isn't as there anymore. And I know he's trying to bring in players and coaches that are going to help him fix that, but that's not a good start in Japan.
Well, yeah, one of the things I saw watching the highlights of the game was pretty consistently was ill discipline and giving away penalties, which has haunted his tenure at the Wallabies. Was one of the biggest call outs there. So just maybe the priorities aren't in the right space, or not recognizing how important that aspect of the game is. Playing to the referee. Option A, option B. There's just to see that is, the heartening thing from an Australian fan is to see that it's not just Australia who's suffering from it. That yes, it is definitely an endemic problem here, but it was also partially could be laid part of the blame, a portion of the blame, at Eddie's feet as well, given that this is continued over in Japan with him.
Yeah, I just sat there and I go, he quoted saying we're going to keep them in it or something, and right until the very end, and you got pumped by 40 odd points. Like, Eddie, are you going to learn? Are you going to learn? Like this, we need to have it. We need to have an intervention. I think Eddie needs an intervention. Like, shut up, and until you prove yourself on the field, then you can start talking again. But like, I look at it and I go, I think there's a Japan XV game against the New Zealand multi team, and then Japan's next game is 19 days time, 20 days time against Georgia and Italy, and I go, after watching what I watched. Don't get me wrong, England were fucking good as well. I'm not trying to take away credit from England, because England did what we expect England should do to a Japan team like that. They ran them off the park. They were physical. They dominated. England looked very good. And does it have me a little bit nervous? No, because I'm a biased All Blacks fan that will never look upon England like they're going to beat the All Blacks. But they looked good against the Japan team. But Japan looked bad as well. Like, it's a combination of both. They just never looked in it. Again, you said Marcus Smith was very good. I just go, Eddie, have an intervention, sit down, shut up for a while, play some rugby, get your team winning, and then we can talk. And again, as someone mentioned, it's the start of a World Cup cycle. So he's got time in the seat this time, so he can have these results. Japan rugby will give him that leash, I think, all the way up until the World Cup. But if in 4 years the World Cup comes around and Japan disappoint, his legacy is officially tarnished, I think. That's the thing. Yeah. Like, I think this is his going out of rugby kind of 4 years. Like, I think he'll end up in a director's box somewhere in like France or something like that, still in the game. Yeah. But I think this will be his last head coaching international role, unless it goes well. But even if it goes average, I go, do you want that circus? Is that what you want in your international rugby club? Probably not. So, interesting, very interesting. Next game that was up was South Africa versus Wales. The Welsh hung in for a half, and then the South African class shone through. Now, what I will say is I think South Africa were bang on where they wanted to be, and that was they were average. And I say average, I don't mean their performance was average, but I don't think they showed much in the locker. I think they held a lot back in that game is what I'm trying to say. There wasn't any slick moves. It was very stock standard rugby. And I think they did that because they know this is as good as that win was. It's not the be all end all. They're not going to look back at this year and go, Wales came close to us. They're preparing for a game next, the series that's coming up, which is the Irish series. And I think, with all due respect to them, I think they took it a little easy and got surprised in that first half.
It wasn't a clean performance as well. A lot of mistakes and inaccuracy hurt the South Africans there. So as much of a one-sided scoreline as it was, it could have been a lot more. And Wales, against such a tough opponent, did well to, you never. I don't want to give too many props for a 41-13 scoreline, but they did the best that they could in the circumstances, and kept it as low as they possibly could.
I look and I go, for South Africa not pulling a lot of tricks out of the bag, I thought that was a poor they were, up until half time, they were in that fight and they were fighting.
Yeah.
And then the second half, it's just like they lost that fight. And a South African team can do that to you. They can wear you down. They can beat you. I mean, the All Blacks are in the same position last year. I think they got pumped by 30 in that Qatar Cup. So it's not, don't take a backward step if you're Welsh, but I just felt for the first half they put on, they'll be really disappointed with that second half. The only good thing that came from the weekend, if you're an anti-South African fan, which I obviously was, I just would like to see them lose to the Welsh. That would have been funny. Hope they beat the Irish. Can I keep saying that? But the URC final, which was held in South Africa, the Bulls went down to Glasgow. So the Scots actually took out the URC, which is quite funny to me because we've got all this talk about the Irish and the South Africans in this series coming up, and they lost to a bloody Scottish team. Back to back, that Glasgow team needs to be celebrated. Back to back, they went and beat Munster in Munster. Then they went down to South Africa and beat South Africa in South Africa. So the Bulls, I should say, not South Africa. But I sit there and I go, that's now 2 home final losses to URC teams, I believe. I think it was the Bulls lost last year to Munster in the final, or the Stormers lost last year to Munster in the final. And I go, 3 years in the comp, they won the first year. The last 2 years, no wins, hosting 2 finals. Just interesting to take note of that. And again, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, most South Africans, the biggest thing they care about is international rugby, winning Rugby World Cups. Yeah. But that's 2 years in a row where they've lost these club final games. And
come back to Super Rugby, South Africa.
Yeah, if you want to win one, yeah. We'd love to have you, but I don't think that's going to happen. But, yeah, that was just something to take off the South African fans. Just take the shine off your weekend. I'm hoping that did. I'm looking for anything. I'm grasping anything. What we got South African winning their game. We got the Blues winning their game. I've got to look for something. And if it's a Scottish win on South African soil, I'll take that.
Your Gold Coast Titans put up 66 points. If you look at cross code.
Yeah, against the Warriors though. I
was going to leave that part off for you.
It's the one team I don't want them to do it against, and they did it against them. So look, I was blanking that off my head as well. I was like, this has just been one of those.
I was trying to help you out, but
yeah, I get it. And then the game of the week, Fiji versus the Barbarians, and I go, shit, I wish rugby was more like this. I think we need to rule that if you're in your own half, you can't kick the ball, because that's pretty much how the Barbarians and Fiji played. Like there was definitely sometimes they kicked it, but it was 45-32 finish, something like that.
45-32.
Yeah, just high scoring, high energy.
And considering the Fijians got off the plane 2 or 3 days beforehand without a lot of their best players still being locked into the top 14 competition and things like that, it's a pretty valiant effort for them.
Yeah, let's speak on this quickly. how fucking rude it is the French rugby. Now, I get, like, some players couldn't be released there, obviously. La Rochelle, like, had their semi-final and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I believe there was still some players that didn't get released that could have played this game. And then what did the French do? They released Gael Ficau, who was the lock. They also released, what's his face? I'm going to bring his name up. No, I've lost it. Oh, Cameron Wokey. So there was 2 free French fucking lads that they released, and I went, that seems a bit backhanded. We can't release these Fijian players to go and play for Fiji, but the Baa Baas, they can have some fucking French.
See, that for me, that definitely rubs me the wrong way. Now, there were some good arguments, I think, in the comments on our post about, or on other posts that I've seen. Anyway, comments all over the place that was pretty consistent in that at the end of the day, the clubs will have to rehab these injuries, and so you can see why the club's not releasing for these games. That would be a fair enough argument if it was applied consistently, but the fact that they then release these French players, the Barbarians, it's not consistent. It is one rule for Fijians, another rule for the French, and that is, I mean, that's just plain old discrimination. Like, there's no, like, come on, it's like, let's call it what it is. You know, that's pretty, it's pretty bald-faced to do that. That's just, it's pretty disgraceful. Yeah.
And it makes me think, I go, this is why teams don't want to select players playing overseas. You know, like, because for this reason alone, like, you look at it and you go, well, they're not getting released. And even if you think about it, the Springboks, I don't think they have many playing in France. Like, I know Sia Kolisi is a couple. I'm trying to think. Obviously, now that the South African teams are in the IC, it makes it a bit easier to select those players. But also, like, Andre Pollards and Leicester, a lot of them are in Japan. And I think that's where, I reckon if you're an international rugby team, where would you want your players to go? Probably Japan, because you're probably going to get a bit more to and fro from the clubs in Japan than you are in France, because France clubs obviously run by French millionaires, billionaires who are fucking pricks, and there's no doubt about it. Let's not hide behind the fact that if you're French multi-millionaire and you own a rugby club, you're probably going to be an utter wanker. Now, you've got every right to say no, they can't play, and yes, they can play because it's your club. But I go, if I'm an international rugby team, if I'm the Springboks, I'm hoping that none of my players sign for a France deal. And I see why England haven't done it and selected those players, because I don't think half of their team would have got released if the Owen Farrells, forgotten the winger, Ardenils, wouldn't have got released to come and play over in Japan. So I go, I understand it to a point, like, why you wouldn't want that to happen because of what we've just seen. And I think there would be even more bias to those Tier 1 teams. They would be like, no, we're paying these Tier 1 players or international players a lot of money, not getting released. So it leaves a sour taste in your mouth when you're seeing stuff like that. But again, it's their choice, I guess. Like, we can't control it too much. With Super Rugby now wrapped up, we look forward to international calendar mid-year tests getting underway. Only one game next week is the Japan XV versus New Zealand Māori. Then after that, we roll into it. Samoa, Italy, Georgia, Fiji, USA, Romania, New Zealand, England, the first test. All Blacks XV, New Zealand Māori, and Australia versus Wales. All less than 2 weeks away now. Are we fucking excited? Yeah, we are. We are pretty bloody excited. Unfortunately, though, my co-host has decided, right now is a good time to fucking dip overseas. So, Hughesy, where are you going again? Run us through it.
I am heading to Malta, Poland, and merry old England. So, little mini European tour.
Yeah, excellent. As you do, in the middle of summer, most Aussies and Kiwis try and get away from that terrible weather down south.
Well, it's all a purely family event. So, going to Malta to see family there, going to Poland to see my partner's family, and then going to England for a friend's wedding. So I'm not going to have any time to relax on my holiday. It'll all be busy.
Love that. So for the next few weeks, it'll be just myself. We'll get some questions in. I'll run you through all the international rugby that I see, some predictions, a couple of cool videos like that. And then when Hughes is back, we'll get the rundown and obviously how all the family scene was, and run into some mid-year test stuff. Lastly, on the Manscaped, Hughesy, do you want to take us away? Because that deal runs out at the end of June, I believe.
Yeah, so you've got, well, as of the day of recording, you've got a week left, no less than a week because June's only 30 days. You've got a few days left to use the code Rugby Booth, all one word, all caps, on Manscaped to get 20% off. Look, excellent products. I've talked about them in a separate video. Um, Very good quality stuff. Having used one of their old razors. I think the 2.0, and they've given us the 5.0. The improvement I was actually very surprised at. I thought, you're wary of these things with products, as everyone should rightfully be a little bit skeptical these days of, is this just a rebrand? Is there anything actually significantly different? I was surprised in the ease of use that there was, and just the overall, I guess, like you can be a bit freer with it and not having to worry as much about pinching and things like that. So, look, highly recommend it. Check it out. Use the code Rugby Booth for 20% off, and keep yourself clean.
How good. All right, QZ. Good luck on your travels. We'll see you in a
Thanks,
couple
mate.
of weeks. But for now, that is us for today. Thank you for joining us. I've been Luke. That's been Husey. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Peace.